try to figure out how do the knowledge of students section and the generation and use of assessment data sections blend. How do they scaffold on each other? How do you write them so you're not writing the same thing? This is what it's like. This is the experience from an assessor reading it, from somebody outside the box. So we start with the knowledge of students at the top. You've gained a lot of knowledge, which for the most part, you're going to be describing. So notice what I've done with the actual questions that have come out of your bullet points in your manual. These 4 go linearly to help build understanding to the assessor of what and who those sources of information were you gathered. So you're just going to describe it. What guided you in selecting them? So again, they're just wanting to hear what you're thinking in your brain. What are your wheels saying? Should be very short, sentence or 2, not much. Why were those sources important for the information you were collecting and the selected class of groups? Again, that should not go on for days and days and days. Get to the point. Why did you choose those? You already told us what, now why. If you already said it on the form, you're not going to say it the same way because they've already read the form too. How did you determine the relative importance of the different kinds of information you gathered? Okay, so again, this is mostly just you thinking out loud. Then you're going to say, from all of those things that you just described, what are some of the trends you identified from that information that you gathered? Oh, we're on a different level now. Now we're really trying to analyze trends out of everything that's on this top line. And we're going to analyze how we identified and confirmed those trends. It's one thing to say, I think ... but then to actually confirm them. I knew it was true because I knew my students needed support with nonfiction text because their test scores, or the collaboration I had with so-and-so said, right? Then what other factors did you take away? So what are things other than what these questions have already asked that you think are important for the assessor to know that you picked out, like picking fleas off a dog? Like, oh, that and that and that and that. I got that. They want to just see that you're able to pick the things out of your KOS documentation. We just looked at the KOS documentation of our friend here. And so now she's answering these questions to those pieces of documentation we just looked at. Based on your analysis, here's our analysis right here of those. What are the needs of this group of students? Do you remember what I told you? You pick all this information, you gather it and collaborate so you can find the needs. And then what do we do with the needs? After we find the needs, we say, this is what my kids are going to need. They're going to need these kind of supports. They're going to need this kind of content and learning. I'm going to need to collaborate and connect with these other people that are around me. And this is why. So in a nutshell, the knowledge of students' work then is the foundation of the house. You've built the floor, the walls, the windows, you've built the whole foundation. So now the assessor knows who you're dealing with, how well you know those kids you're dealing with, what you think you're going to have to do in this particular lesson to meet them, why you think these tools are the best tools for these particular children. That's what you're setting up here for. Now, the National Board tells us to you, most of us don't see this, but it says you will show how you apply this information to one particular unit of instruction in the next section. So now, should we be talking about our unit of instruction at all here? No, because now we're going to move to application. So I think it's important that we look at Bloom's taxonomy here and thinking about the way we're scaffolding this for our assessor. This is what we just did for our assessor. We helped them to gain information about who our people are and what we are doing. We help them understand. We explained and described to them what we know and what we think is going to be necessary to be able to teach these kids that they need, and not just out of thin air, right? And let assessment drive instruction. Now we're moving to the next phase, which is generation and use of assessment data. And we're moving up to the apply. Now we are applying everything we know and understand about our kiddos and about what they need as far as the test data or, stuff that we found on them. We're now going to apply that and practice that in a unit. And then we're going to analyze and evaluate in this next section. This next section will be applying, analyze, and evaluate in our writing. Our writing will be different. In the very end, the reflection part of C4, that's after participation of learning communities, that's when you're going, the create is almost like the reflection. We're going to create a plan for the future. What's going to happen in the future? So we'll be running all the way up Bloom's taxonomy here with our writing. So when we move into generation and use of assessment data, then again, we go back to what we already said, but we don't restate it. We already told them what we needed to tell them in those 2 pages. So now notice the question word here. How? How did you use this knowledge of this group of students that you collected and developed and the unit objectives to inform the planning of this unit? So what happens is teachers sometimes talk about what the unit is up here. They talk about it right there. We're not there yet. We're not there yet. That's not what we're there for. We got to get down here to talk about our unit. So all of this is kind of the bigger stuff. It's connecting. It's that direct connect from the knowledge of students into generation. It's your bridge, so to speak, that where you're actually thinking out loud about, what you chose to teach them that matched what we know about them, and how the knowledge you had of those students actually informed the types of assessments you used. Certain students need certain types of assessments, and then the steps you would take to ensure the assessment results provided consistent, fair, accurate information about students' performance. So that's making sure there's equitable, diverse, it's planned so that all the students could, it would just be a fair test. Okay. So do you see how this line of questioning is generalized? It's generalized under us trying to get to know you and how you're using assessment, and most specifically, how you are connecting that assessment back to what you just told us in knowledge of students. So you are applying your knowledge now to a unit and assessment. Then your formative assessment results come in here. During this part, you're pushing out your formative, you're pushing out your self-assessment, you're teaching your unit, you're doing all of that. And then now you've gathered your formative assessment and you're going to look at the results. So when the results are in front of you, you've got them in front of you, you're looking at these 3 questions, actually these 5 questions. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ducks in a row. And some of you will say, oh, but Tracey, do we have to keep citing and taking the assessors back over here and over there and da-da-da? You don't have to, but for the times they ask you to, which are the times that you see in yellow here on my screen. So you must specifically take them back and cite examples from around your formative assessment data here. You must specifically create that direct link between the information that's on the KOS and the assessment that you have made here under formative. When it gets to the summative, it's not a repeat of formative because it's only talking about summative. Do you see how when you answered these 5 ducks in a row, you were not talking about the summative at all? No, the summative comes here. And then you have its 3 ducks in a row talking about the summative assessment. And then finally, you've got the self-assessment evidence that comes in here, and this question is being answered around self-assessment. And then it's like a really nice wrap up in the end where they make you cite evidence again, specific examples, and notice what they're wanting you to do. They're wanting you to look at this full throttle KOS and all Gen U of A. So your FA, your SA, your SSA, all of that stuff. So in a nutshell, back up here, evaluate. Y'all following me? We're at evaluate. We are making judgments. We are assessing. We are critiquing. We are understanding at a deeper level. How did we apply the knowledge, that overarching knowledge we have that we accumulated through all of that KOS and consulted on to create the unit assessments to move to future instruction with this group of students? How is all of this now going to connect? What are our gaps, so to speak? What's our gap plan? And we have to go and evidence that and say, it's evidence in Anna Maria's rubric for her poem analysis that students are lower performing on this particular objective. Therefore, in the future, because I know that they're visual learners and they were lower on this summative objective, I'm going to plan for ... So now we've taken them back to the fact that we know they're visual learners to her KOS. We've taken them back that we know that they're lower in this data point on her KOS. We've taken them back to her essay and said, look right here. It's red. They not less than 50% of the class passed this particular objective on the essay.